I think it's popping up.
Okay, great. So this is the Cambridge Solar Map tool, and it was created, it came out of a project that started as a research project at MIT and actually ended up being commercialized through a company that was created called MapDwell. And I mention this because this MapDwell solar system is available in other cities and towns. So if you are interested in acquiring a similar map for your city, you can go ahead and get in touch with MapDwell. I just wanted to quickly walk through the map so that you guys could see sort of how it works and how we hope that it inspires people to take the next step on solar and really reach out to a solar contractor. As you can see here, Cambridge, we were actually the first city to have this map, but it has started to spread. So here in Massachusetts, Boston and Wellfleet have this map. There is a similar map for Washington, D.C., and also internationally, the city in Chile. I'm just going to go ahead over here and type in my address so you can take a look at the roof of my house, and it works really easily. Just kind of type it in and click on the one that you want. You can see right here, I live in a multifamily building, so I have a large flat roof, and the dots are colored to show where the solar access is best. And there's also an ability to adjust the opacity of the dots so that you can actually see what's underneath of the roof. Let me see here. So that, like, for instance, the air conditioner units on my roof are right in this area, and they wouldn't be able to be covered with solar. So it allows the homeowner to also kind of see, like, if they have pipe intrusions or skylights or other things on their roof to plan around it. So there's a couple of different ways that you can design your solar system using this tool. The first one is that it will just configure the system for a typical owner. And as you can see, because I have such a large roof and there's actually multiple owners in our building, it just blocked off a sort of small area of the roof. And because over here I have this as a residential project as opposed to a commercial project, it's going to show me all of the costs for residential, all of the rebates, and it's also going to show me some estimates around the generation value, so how much electricity I would generate each month and the value of that electricity, and also the solar renewable energy credit value. And I actually just looked at my electric bill, and this past month my electric bill was almost $60 on the money. So this generation value of $58, is pretty close to. I'm just saying that the typical system cost, typical system calculator is showing a pretty good, well-sized system. One thing to note is that we have not taken out the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center rebate. That is something that we need to update on the back end, but it's easy for the homeowner to just cross it out, and the system will recalculate. So in addition to cost, it will also show the homeowner the return on investment. So how long would it be to pay back the system, and how does that investment actually compare to other types of investment like gold and the Dow Jones Industrial Average? There's also a place to insert any information about perhaps maybe a home equity loan that a homeowner would take out to finance their loan system, or with the new state of Massachusetts solar loan that's coming online, they could also use this to calculate that solar loan information. And then here are some more technical details about the actual systems that they're recommending, including the ability to change the efficiency of the panel, as well as some information about your environmental impact. You can also change the dollar per watt of the system. So if you feel like our estimate of dollar per watt is high or low, you can change that. We calculated this based off of the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center's information about solar installations in the immediate area around Cambridge, Somerville, Boston, as opposed to using a state average, because solar systems tend to cost a little bit more here in Cambridge, primarily I think because there are a lot of flat roofs, and so there's additional equipment needed. You can also use this tool to look at the design a solar system around how much money you want to save on your electricity bill each month. So since my electricity bill is $60, it will sort of redesign the system just to help with that, particular electricity bill. Or if you know that you have a certain amount of money to invest, let's say that you know that you have $10,000 that you'd like to invest, and you're not sure sort of how that investment will play out in terms of a return on investment with solar, you can have it calculate the return on investment. And then finally, there are a bunch of ways that you can actually just draw your own system and really customize it to match, where exactly you want it on the roof, or, exactly how many panels you want. But if we go back to this typical system and just click the install button, I can download a report. And this is actually like a homeowner's report that can, here you can see, you can still adjust opacity issues here. It's still sort of like a live PDF. You can change it to a commercial system. You can put these tax credits in and out. You can do these calculations for all of the stuff that you could do in the tool. You can still change here. And then you can go ahead and print this or save this and use it as a way to talk with a solar contractor about what you're looking for in terms of a solar system. So overall, we found that this hopefully helps people to feel like reaching out to a solar contractor, they have a lot of information before they start. I think a lot of people feel like they need to be sort of experts before they go and meet with contractors, and so this helps give some education and expertise, and also a jumping off point to talk to a contractor about exactly what they're looking for. I think it also prevents people who don't have good solar access. For instance, this roof down in the lower corner of this little picture right here, only one side of this roof has solar access. So, you wouldn't want someone to think that they can install solar on their whole roof. So it helps people kind of get a sense of really how much solar their roof can support and exactly where that solar would need to be. So, for instance, this building right here, really only one side of the roof, one small area, and it looks like there's also some skylights on that roof. So they would want to build the system around that. So we're really happy with this map, and we think that it really helps inspire people to hopefully take the next step on solar PV installations.
Thank you, Megan. We appreciate that presentation. And thank you to Emma and Cammie for your time and your insights. We have received questions, so I'll get to that in a moment, but I did want to remind everyone that we are recording this webinar, so we will be sharing it by email to all registrants, and we'll have it up on our Clean Energy page at mapc.org. So we'll send you all details for that. And I do want to say that DOER's presentation, there was some kind of incompatibility when we uploaded it onto our computer, so we'll send you the original version, and hopefully the audio will all be set at that point too. So let me start with a question to Cammie, actually. Someone wrote in about their interest in ground-mounted solar array, and they are curious about the pros and cons.
Sure. So even though it's a little bit outside the direct topic of this webinar, since we're talking about kind of the soft costs, and ground mounts are kind of, the whole thing. But a good question, and something that I think all of us that are really working in the space, kind of go back and forth on, what is most valuable to communities economically and environmentally and so on. So, there's obviously pros and cons to all the different types of installations. I think you have to look at it as, what kind of ground-mounted installation are you looking to install? If you're covering greenfield with it, just a big open space that could be used for other types of development or conserved for environmental use or recreation, then that might be something that you'd consider as being a more difficult sell in a lot of cases. Something that I think for the best, the Department of Energy Resources has disincentivized through the last SREC 2 program, the Solar Renewable Energy Credit Program, that development on greenfields. And so the ground mounts that are more of on the pro side for me are those that really use land that is very difficult to develop otherwise. So those, on landfills and brownfields, there's a lot of parking canopy installations being planned right now, and that's been incentivized under SREC to, looking at, community solar, also in those same spaces. The ground mounts are a great opportunity for that because they generally tend to be nice and big. So looking at, big parking lots, at landfills and those types of things, and considering those for community shared solar as well is another great way to use the ground mounted type of application for solar installation. Sometimes the costs can be lower, so they are higher if you are building on a landfill or building on a parking lot. I think we're playing around here with what we're trying to share with you guys. I think we're trying to bring up the last screen with all of our names and contact information, so just bear with us on that. I did want to say something, too, about the technical difficulties. Just apologies, again, for especially the start of this. We were trying to be kind of ambitious and do it in a new way where a lot of it was pre-recorded, so we would avoid a lot of those technical difficulties that occurred during these webinars that we've all experienced, and it didn't really work out for us in our favor at the beginning anyway. Hopefully in the end it turned out okay, and it gives us a little bit more flexibility with editing when we send the link to the recorded presentations later too. So again, apologies for the difficulties early on and at times along the way. But yeah, I think financing ground mounts, it really depends on what kind of ground mount space that it's covering. So I'll end there. I don't know if I really answered that question too fully. See if any of the other presenters want to chime in. Emma or Megan, if you have thoughts on that, or we can go on to the next question.
I think you covered that well.
All right. Let me get to another question then. Megan, someone says, our town has been working to approve a solar field on a landfill that has residential properties abutting it. I would like to know if there are any guidelines for incorporating ground-mounted solar installations in or near residential areas, which might help us with this project and future projects that are close to residential areas.
Yeah, I think the challenge with this question is that I'm very well versed in rooftop solar. Because the city of Cambridge is a rather dense area, so we have not actually tackled any ground-mounted solar systems here in Cambridge. I'm not sure if Cammie or anyone else on the call has some more experience with the ins and outs of the ground-mounted solar.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, Megan, what might be the more interesting question for you would be not necessarily on ground mounts, but in terms of residential opposition. If you've run into in Cambridge, on the ground, residents, having issues with, not wanting to have solar either on, if it's a shared building on their roof, if that's come up, or, on a space near them, or if if there's been problems with aesthetics or glare or any type of residential complaints that maybe you've dealt with, that might be less in Cambridge than some other communities. But you're right, it's a very dense city, so maybe there's been occasions where you've had to deal with those kind of complaints. I'm curious kind of what you've heard and what's kind of been your response.
Yeah, it's going to sound like we're, living in a fantasy land over here, but I personally have never fielded any complaints about solar, other than people who, potentially feel like we are not doing enough to give people more money to do solar. So a lot of our complaints that people, a lot of complaints that we hear are more about, what's the city doing to encourage solar more. I will say that I think part of the reason why we don't hear a lot of complaints about solar is because the city is so dense. A lot of our buildings are, 3 stories or higher. Even our residential buildings, we have a lot of triple deckers, and we have a lot of flat roofs. So you often don't even see the solar panels from the street. You have to really be looking for them. So a lot of people, this I think really works against us, is that a lot of people aren't aware of how much solar is actually already installed in the city. They think it's still this very rare type of thing, and it's really, it's up on roofs and just not very visible from the narrow streets with the higher buildings. I mean, I live next door to a building that has both solar PV and solar hot water on it, and the only reason I can even see the very edge of those panels is because I'm on the third floor, like level with the roof. But when I'm walking up and down my street, I have no idea. I mean, I have to really walk down a side area to even try to spot the panels. So, that's a long way of saying that we haven't heard a lot of direct complaints about it, and even our historical commission is very friendly towards solar. Sometimes they have some requests about making the panels, more aesthetically integrated into the home, which can sometimes drive up costs. But, we haven't run into a lot of roadblocks from individual citizens.
That's great to hear. And I know that in some of the cities and towns, that we've been dealing with on this, that haven't been quite so lucky. I mean, some of it is, you're right, a much less dense city or town. It's much more visible. The city might have, or town residents might have a different kind of feelings toward it, might not be as familiar yet or ready to be looking at solar panels all around. So I definitely have heard that that some offices and municipal staff are dealing with complaints. And the best advice I'd have, and then I think we have a good question that just came in that would be for Emma, but is really the community engagement side of things. It's something when we're working with a city or town on this, it might be that, the developer that we're working with or our staff themselves, go to a Concom meeting, or go to, a town meeting, an annual town meeting, go to a city council meeting, or, have some sort of toolkit or document put together for residents that can kind of explain, what the process is, how really glare won't be an issue, even though that, people might be afraid of that, or how, they're going to be built exactly on top of a rooftop that's 3 stories tall, so you're really going to see very little of it. There's ways to engage and make people more aware on these things. So from my end, I would say community engagement is really the best way to kind of deal with that, whether it's ground mounted next to residential, which I definitely have some communities that are working on right now, and it's really anticipating that and planning your outreach strategy to get people comfortable with it. So that would be my best advice on that one. Emma, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. And we also had a question come in about electrical inspectors and about trainings for them that might be able to be recommended. I know you guys did some, as you talked about, but if there's others coming up or others that are holding those trainings for electrical inspectors on solar PV. And Emma, you might need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Emma, are you there? Maybe we've lost your audio for a moment. Megan, you're welcome to chime in. Someone's also interested in learning about the MapWell software and if there was a cost to the City of Cambridge for that, and how other municipalities may access that.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think community outreach is definitely important. Just this past weekend on Sunday, I was at a solar workshop that was organized by some residents of a neighborhood association. And so I think that, making sure that the city, can attend those kinds of workshops and be there to encourage solar installations. I also act as the energy advisor for the city in terms of fielding calls from residents and small businesses with questions about renewable energy and energy efficiency. And I think, just having the outlet of knowing that there's someone kind of unbiased for someone to call and kind of get the information straight from the source is helpful to people. In terms of the MapWell map, yes, there is a cost for that map. And I will be honest in saying that because we were the pilot program for the map, our cost is lower than the map has been sold for to other cities. So I don't want to comment on the specific cost stuff. The best way to investigate having MapWell create a map for another city would be to contact them through their website, or if you have trouble reaching them, I can connect you with Eduardo, who is the president of MapWell and who is still, working very closely with getting these systems into other cities.
Thank you. And let me turn to Kimmy again. Someone asks, what is your suggestion for public sector customers to take advantage of the ITC and accelerated depreciation, and not simply do a PPA with a private system owner?
So I don't know if whoever asked this question is going to love my answer. But first, let me just clarify so everyone knows who's listening. ITC is the investment tax credit, and that's a federal tax credit. And currently, it's at 30%, and it's set to expire at the end of 2016, or at least at that point, the 30% will expire, and it'll drop down to a 10%, which will make it much more difficult for most developers to finance these solar projects. So a lot of them are really rushing to get as much done as possible before the ITC expires from that 30%. It's possible always that it could be extended, but even if it were, those things aren't usually happening at Congress until the very last minute. So most are anticipating or preparing in a way that it would. So to take advantage of that it's through that, really, I should say, and the SREC, the Solar Renewable Energy Credit incentives through Massachusetts, that are the big tools that allow these projects to be financeable and economic in a lot of cases. And for the ITC, it's only private entities that can take advantage of that. Public entities cannot. And so for a city or town to own a system outright, it's going to be much more expensive because they're not able to take advantage of the investment tax credit. And so that's why the majority at this point really do look to do a PPA, which is a power purchase agreement, which is normally about 20 years long, with a private developer who can then finance it through taking advantage of the ITC. And that, like I said, makes it much more economic, and then allows, through the power purchase agreement, the city or town then is buying back from the private developer, from the third party. They're buying back either energy with a certain cents per kilowatt hour, 10 cents, 12 cents per kilowatt hour, maybe something in that range, or is buying back the net metering credits through a virtual net metering credit purchase agreement. So those are the standard ones that cities and towns, anyway, are taking advantage of, and that's definitely the mechanism that most that I'm working with are using, and it really is because it's the most flexible mechanism at this point to take advantage of. So that really, as far as my work goes, and I'm sure there's others out there, and I think, the solar loan program should allow residents and small businesses and others that DOER is developing now to be able to buy more of these things outright. For a city or town, though, that's a public entity, the majority are going to find that it tends to be most economic to work through that kind of third-party arrangement. It also, a lot of them I find kind of prefer that in any way. Yes, you're not then the one who's, buying the credits outright. You're not the one owning the system, for which there are definite pros to, don't get me wrong. But you also then are not responsible for the operation and maintenance of that site. And you usually have a performance guarantee throughout that contract, so that you are guaranteed, as a city or town, you're not risking what for your taxpayers anything beyond what that guarantee gives you. So you know that you'll be paying a lower price in most, in all cases, or most cases, I should say, a lower price, and sometimes a much lower price than the electricity rates now and into the future, for long term. And so a lot of them find it to be a really useful mechanism. There are, I will say, and this is something that just is really in preliminary stages, there are some co-ops, or at least one that I know of in Massachusetts, an energy co-op, which is a nonprofit that is developing some community shared solar sites around New England. And that model might be one of the new waves of the future, because they're able to get financing through a private entity so that they're able to take advantage of the ITC. And then through the co-op model, they're able to sell back those shares in the community shared solar type of installation. And that could be housed in the municipality. The municipality could help them take advantage of it if it wanted to work with them, or it could be on a private spot. But I think there's a lot of potential options there, but it's really just getting off the ground. But that's something to look out for, and I think there's a lot of people who are looking into what other pathways are there besides that standard third-party PPA for public entities to take advantage.
Hey, folks, this is Emma. Can you hear me now?
Oh, great. We can hear you, Emma. Would you like to respond on the electrical inspector training question, or any of the others posed?
Yeah, sure. I'll go on the electrical training questions. And sorry, folks, technical difficulties seem to be the name of the game for us today. So on those electrical training questions, yes, we did, as I said in the webinar, 6 across the state, as well as one additional one via webinar. We're thinking about doing a possible group of more, this time to also include fire safety officials and fire officials, though we haven't secured anything yet. So stay tuned. I imagine if we do it again, it'll be around a similar time of year. But please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have more questions on that. And DOER will be very, we'll be sure to put out information on them well in advance so folks are aware.
Fantastic. So I think we're going to end on that note. We did go over in time, and I do want to thank all of you for presenting, Cami, Emma, Megan. These are great presentations, and we definitely want to share the resources that you described with our registrants. So we will email you all the recording in a cleaner form without the glitches that we faced, hopefully. And you can reach us. We'll have our contact information in that email too. Not sure if, Cami, you have any other words?
No, just thank you again, everybody, for your patience today. We're really excited to get to present this information again. And you know, it's funny, like I said, we lost Emma back in January for that workshop because of the flu that everyone was getting. And of course, it happened to go around just the same time. So I know Emma's been fighting sickness the last week. Megan's had a little one who's been sick at home. It's been a tough week for everyone, but we pulled it together.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone who tuned in, for your patience. And like Axum said, we'll send out the resources to everyone very shortly. But have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us here for this webinar today.
Thank you all. Bye.